here with Professor Lily Burciaga, the Assistant Professor of Clinical Mental Health Counseling and the Associate Director of the Gros Institute here at Lewis University, which will host a peace teach-in next week on October 19th. So welcome, Professor Burciaga, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, of course. So to start, could you tell us a little bit about what the Gros Institute is?
Sure. The Gros Institute provides opportunities for dialogue for various different collaborators around issues of social justice, as well as social justice action. Essentially, it provides the opportunity to put forth the vision of Brother Gros, who was really focused on creating understanding around various different religions and perspectives. And we have various different initiatives. Some of those initiatives are around community organizing, restorative justice, and then also eco-justice.
Wow, so that sounds like a great institute with some really great initiatives. So the Peace Teach-In coming up next week, could you tell me a little bit about the events that will be happening?
Yes, the Peace Teach-In takes place over 2 days. So that's Wednesday and Thursday, the 18th and 19th. And there are various different sessions taking place during that time. And what's really interesting is that these sessions take an interdisciplinary perspective. So we get to hear from various panelists, just opportunities for dialogue around the intersection of climate justice and health justice. And essentially, it provides the opportunity for us to share more and think about opportunities for us to take action or how we can each play a role.
Wow, that's amazing. And I know at the teach-in there's going to be a special guest speaker. So Leah Thomas, who's actually the author of The Intersectional Environmentalist, How to Dismantle Systems of Oppression to Protect People and the Planet, and she'll speak towards the end, I believe. So could you tell me a bit about Leah and her new book?
Yes, well, this last portion that takes place in the evening is part of the Gros Memorial. And as you mentioned, it takes place every year. This is the sixth year that is taking place. And the Gros Memorial includes a combination of different activities. So it'll start off with some lovely flute music, a blessing of the land, and then following Leah Thomas's keynote. After that, there'll be opportunities for book signing, which is pretty cool, I think. Mm-hmm. So a little bit about Leah's book. The book is essentially a call to action for everyone, right? Because it explores the intersection between environmentalism as well as privilege and racism. And what Leah brings is a unique perspective as being a Black author. And what I really enjoy about her book, or really like about her book, is that she also allows the opportunity for perspectives from other groups, right? For instance, Latino and Asian contributors as well as queer. And she provides essentially an overview of the field, as well as how it's been historically intersected with issues that or not issues, but actual voices that have been left out. And so how that impacts the poor, how that impacts other groups, who are, or communities, right, who are struggling and more largely impacted by the climate issues. And so it's a key piece essentially is beginning to acknowledge, right, that this is actually happening, that there are certain groups that are more impacted than others, and that unless we work together to really understand how this is happening and take a look at ourselves and how we can change some of the behaviors that have kind of become our usual go-to, then we're not going to be able to save the earth, right? And so her book essentially just provides that introduction and calls to action. And so the other thing that her book adds are different toolkits. Mm-hmm. So a lot of other different ideas from various other contributors about what we might be able to do, how we might be able to carry things out, especially as reflected from various different perspectives or disciplines.
Got it. And that sounds like a wonderful book with some really great insight and discussion. And I know in your classes you implement some peace circles to also sort of generate that discussion of important topics with your students. So could you tell me a bit about these peace circles and what they are?
Yeah, of course. Well, part of the Gros Institute includes that restorative initiative, the restorative justice initiative I mentioned. And so we do trainings, as well as, many of us practice or keep circles within our classrooms, like those of us that are teaching here at Lewis. Part of what we aim to focus on is creating community connection and engagement. Excuse me. Now, peace circles can be used in a number of different ways. It can, and part of that, as you mentioned, is to have difficult dialogue or to just provide opportunities for people to engage in deep listening. So part of how we use them in the classroom is to facilitate difficult conversations. So for instance, like part of what you saw in the video was kind of me sitting with some students, and we use our talking piece to take turns or to have some dialogue. And it's a space that it's meant to create safety, to be egalitarian, so that we are on a level playing field, and it's also value-based, right? So we value being able to connect in a way where we can be empathic and understanding of one another, be respectful, and also hold a foundation where we can have these difficult conversations and feel that those various different perspectives, will be accepted and respected. We also essentially borrow from indigenous practices. And so we know these are practices that have been going on from generations to generations. And so we value them, and we always acknowledge that we are using some of these indigenous practices. And for the classroom, sometimes they are kind of shifted a little bit, just because of the focus oftentimes is kind of related to lecture content. But essentially, it is about creating that safe space, and which really kind of ties in with teaching at Lewis. Right. A big piece of teaching at Lewis is about having a safe, respectful space where we can engage in dialogue and what we're as it relates to what we're learning about.
Right. So I'm curious, how often do you use those peace circles, and how have your students responded to them?
Well, it depends, right? Because there's certain classes that kind of lend themselves better, to peace circles than others. For example, my cross-cultural psychology class, it tends to be a class that I use circles pretty regularly, so almost every week. And part of why I do that is because this class requires really looking at our metacognition. So really thinking about how we think when it comes to various different cultures. And as we compare how similar cultures are to our own and how different they might be. And so the best way for that I have found for us to kind of really look at how we're thinking and look at and have some insights about our class content has been through using circles. And so being able to engage in discussion really facilitates the opportunity for students to look at stories of themselves, and be able to share those experiences and draw connections or make connections between their own cultures as well as the cultures of others, or their experiences, sometimes even biases, and being able to talk about those connections that they've been making as we've been talking about similarities and differences of cultures.
Definitely.
In some of my other classes, I might use maybe once or twice a semester, and when I use them, it is more so just to create a comfortable space, a safe space, where students can feel comfortable sharing. I don't get it, I'm confused, I have questions. And so by engaging in that circle early on in the semester, then students feel more comfortable.
Wow, so those peace circles really sound like a wonderful tool for aiding in discussion and conversation amongst peers. So I thank you for sharing a bit more about them, as well as the Gros Institute's event that's coming up just next week on October 19th. So thank you so much for being here today with us, Professor Burciaga, and we'll be right back.